Welcome to Season 2 of Difference Talks, brought to you by the LeBeau Marketing, Communications, and Training Team. Our guests are inspiring people who share their stories of brand differentiation. Based on our book, The Power of Differentiation, our goal is to inspire 1 million people with the message that winning hearts and minds are the first step in growing market share. Now, on with the show.
Welcome to Difference Talks. I'm Barry LeBeau. I am the author of The Power of Differentiation. I'm the founder of LeBeau Marketing, Communications, and Training. Today we have Ken Schmidt. Ken was Director of Communications at the most iconic motorcycle company in the world, Harley-Davidson. We're going to talk about that amazing brand and what is really behind its success. Plus, we're going to go into when it was struggling and what happened and how they turned it around. So for a quarter of a century, in one role or another, Ken's been right there with the iconic brand. So Ken, welcome to our show.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
Ken, if you can, go through a little bit of your background, authorship, what you're doing today, what you did a few years ago, and then we're going to dive into some very, very granular questions.
My career started in Chicago, working at two PR and marketing firms. And at the first firm I was at, I was in a real casual conversation with someone at an industry event for the AMA. And we're talking about, what accounts you work on, what clients you work, kind of stuff that people talk about. And she happened to mention that their agency had Harley-Davidson as a client. And I, spit out my beer and I said, oh my God, I would cut a leg off to work with Harley-Davidson. I'm a motorcyclist. I live for this stuff. And she goes, oh my gosh, we can't get anybody to work on that. Nobody gets it. Nobody likes it. And Harley didn't have any budget and they're going down the drain. And 2 weeks later, I was on the payroll over there, start working for Harley. And then, going back and forth from Chicago to Milwaukee, had the opportunity to jump across the desk and work in the motorcycle industry. And I never looked back. I was a kid in a candy store. Literally did not believe life could get any better than being surrounded by motorcycles all day.
And people who
day.
love motorcycles. In those days especially, everybody in that building was a rider.
People
they rode in, they left with them, they went on vacations with them, they lived the product.
The halls were lined with them. People's offices were filled with bike parts and gas tanks and antique stuff. And it was just a museum of bikes and extraordinarily awesome, incredibly energetic people all sort of aligned on, all right, this thing is going under. We got a chance to turn this thing around, not to turn it around and make it some kind of a big story, but to save jobs. Keep this thing going, that we love so much and not have to live with the thought of we didn't do enough. So we should have done something different. So to get involved in something when it's failing, I think is the single greatest learning opportunity that exists, because you can see every mistake that was made. You can right wrongs. You can be part of something when it's on the way up, which is really exciting. But the bottom line that I had on that and the other people I was working with is, hey, if the worst thing is that it does not improve, that the numbers just don't align, that the economy and the numbers and everything else just crush the business, we will have been able to watch this happen. And there's tremendous value in that, because most people are only used to seeing things go well and successfully and don't half the time realize the pending train wrecks that are coming their way if they don't open their eyes and look at how the world really works and what eventually happens in successful businesses.
Many of us out there may not even recall or maybe vaguely remember.
Yeah.
Harley was on the edge of extinction. They were ready to go. They were going down. You were there. And what I think is so great for our audience is, look, there's hope. So here's a phenomenal brand that almost was erased. Couple of questions. I'd like you to dive really deep into this. Who saw this going on? Did people believe it was going to happen? Or did it just creep up on them? And then all of a sudden, my gosh, we've got to do something.
Great questions, Barry. And I have to tell you, Harley is a cautionary tale. There was a cautionary tale in the mid 80s. It's a cautionary tale now for management. This is when you see problems coming, you see threats coming, you see competitive threats coming, you don't sit on your hands and hope that they go away and hope that your loyal customers are going to remain loyal and keep the ship afloat, because extraordinarily bad things can happen if you just sit and watch. And frankly, and they sat and watched.
Mhm.
They saw the threat of lookalike products coming over from Japan, from incredibly deep-pocketed companies with names like Honda and Yamaha and the Germans and BMW, extraordinary hardware at very, very favorable prices. So that was the product assault that was happening, that everybody saw coming, after 8.5 decades in business. But the other side that was happening were the societal ills that the company faced. That's that every mom in America hated Harley-Davidson and what it represented, because in their mind, it represented criminals and thugs and lowlifes, because that was what Hollywood was kind of spoon-feeding people,
Right.
in the 50s and 60s and 70s, even into the 80s. So there was this image problem outside the bike world. And within the bike world was this threat of really well-made, really efficient, really innovative bikes of, quote unquote, higher quality at better prices. And Harley watched it come and nearly got buried by it. Didn't get buried by it.
I'll interject one thing. I met with Harley during that period as they were just sliding into this. So they were still doing well, but it was starting to go down. And a good friend of mine, he's actually a good friend of yours too, had invited me there and said, hey, I want you to meet some people. Maybe you can start working with them. And I thought, God, this would be great. So I was sitting in a meeting and I turned to one of their leaders. There were like a half dozen of them in the room. And I said, okay, so what are you guys facing? What's going on out here? And he stopped and he said, hey, look, we sit around and we don't know exactly what it is, but we do so great. This is such a great brand. And sometimes we just sit around and go, whatever it is, it's us. And it's just magic. And we're loving the ride. And I have to tell you, Ken, you're laughing. I can see that.
Wow.
I was gut punched. And I thought, my gosh, you're sitting around being very happy about yourself. What are you going to do? This thing is starting to crumble. So I'll turn back to you. You walked into that environment. What happened? And then you mentioned cautionary tale. Every person that's listening or watching this is at a company, has been, will be, and this could happen to anybody. So back to you. What did you do? How did this thing start to turn around?
What was happening was the management at that time determined that the secret, the thing that was going to turn the company's fortunes around and rekindle the love affair in the riding community, and hopefully, God willing, generate a profit, would be if the company were to radically improve the product, the quality of the product. There's this belief that the product is king, and this is what we do. And if we do it better, this is business in America,
right.
Hearts and minds are going to come knock on our door.
That's right. We'll sell more. We'll be okay now.
And the amazing thing is that Harley became known throughout the world as an industrial leader in quality improvement programs, in things that are now, passe in business, like, just-in-time inventory and quality control systems. And the manufacturing world began singing the company's praises, and the new products that are coming out as a result of this are landing on the covers of bike books, bike magazines around the world. And this is important because these were the harshest critics in the industry for Harley. The bike magazines had nothing good to say about the company or its bikes. Antiquated, old, clunky, and look at all this great new modern stuff that's coming. So suddenly they're saying, hey, folks, these aren't just the best bikes that Harley's built. These are the best bikes being built in the world right now. Well, woohoo! Out come the cigars. It's like, well, we made it. And some people showed up and they bought. But a lot of people showed up and didn't buy. So they got the message that the bikes were better, but they're not flying off the shelf. Right. The phenomenon that is still a few years into the future hasn't started yet, because the buyer said, well, you've got all this great quality. now and all this innovation and great aesthetics, well, so does everybody else. What do you have to justify the difference in price?
Right.
And there's no answer for that. The concept of being a premium brand doesn't work if the customer doesn't see it as a premium and a premium brand. And that was, to me, that was the key learning point in all of this, that we're competing with the wrong thing. This business is all about product, and that's a cardinal sin that so many businesses make. This is what we're known for, and this is what people are loyal to. And you begin to find, as you strip layers away, you know what? You can't make people loyal to a product.
Do you think the reason so often the manufacturer thinks like that is because they themselves are engineers and designers, and the best way to solve all the ills is that new product or feature?
And that's the world that they came up in, right? I mean, building, designing and building and improving stuff. And it's that, well, this is why we're here. This is what we do. We make this product, or we make these products. And if we just do it better, or we do it more efficiently, like everybody's focused on now, let's just be more efficient making the same stuff, and hopefully we'll make a little bit more money on it. The product is king. The product has to be good. There's absolutely no doubt about it. It has to be great. Nobody's going to tolerate anything less than that. But if that's all you're known for, and that's all you talk about, and that's all you promote and all you market, you're basically sending a message to the marketplace that says, compare us. Compare our stuff to somebody else's. And the last thing we want is to be compared to somebody, because they can't understand all the features and the product specs, but they can sure understand that number in the lower right-hand corner with the dollar sign in front of it. Boom. You encourage people to compare. If their stuff costs less, you just push them away.
Internally, there was that belief, we need to do these things, and it's still not working. So morale was down.
Internally, it was the belief that we have to make the product better. We have to just keep doubling down on product. Completely understandable. But from having discussions with riders, kind of talking about what their motivations are, what attracts them to this business, you kept hearing them top time, like, we want to see you guys succeed. We believe in you. And I'm talking about the loyalists out there. These are your World War II, Korean War, Vietnam era veteran, proud American types. We're here for you. You've had our back. Like, we want to support, we want to lift this up. And that's when I kind of, in my brain, just coined this phrase that I still use to this day. So they're not loyal to the product. They're loyal to the people behind it. This is what we have to tap into, as they see us as a collective of people like them. So we're not a faceless entity out here. They feel like they know us only because, we ride to, or we look like them, or the source of their greatest joy.
Right.
So why don't we instead put a lot more emphasis as a business on elevating and glorifying people and delighting people first, and then using the product. The product's the attractant, but what we do for people, and ability to lift people up and recognize them and make them feel better about themselves, is the glue that attracts and keeps them coming back.
How do you do that, and how did they turn this thing around?
There are a lot of very, very happy accidents. And happy accidents happen when you're desperate. God bless America. And what started as almost a cocktail napkin idea of, let's formalize a process to bring people together around the brand. Because we do have that, we actually, executives ride, the leaders ride, the manufacturing people ride and show up at these big industry events, and riders see that. They didn't see the CEO of Honda arriving on a bike, or the CEO of BMW, but here's, Harley CEO, here's, the Davidsons rolling up on bikes. That's, why don't we formalize this? Because we have conversations with riders. They appreciate that. Let's do more of this. See if this pays any dividends. And from that idea, the Harley Owners Group was started, a social club built on the sport of motorcycling, where your local dealer sponsors the club. So you're having a social club meeting on the grounds of the dealer once a month, eventually once a week in a lot of places. Well, gee, what good could come from that? Everybody's establishing first name basis
Right.
relationships, all these bikes coming into the same place at the same time. Cars driving by would see all the bike, it's just generating buzz. What's going on over there? That looks like fun, or there's a band playing out front. What do I got to do to get involved in that? Well, the answer is pretty obvious: is you got to come on in and buy a bike and join in. And what was so amazing about that at a number of levels is when the outside world noticed this. This was, before people were using lingo like close to the customer, which, essentially became a cliche.
Right.
We were actually doing it, and not because there was a huge strategy behind it, but more of, let's try this and see if it pays dividends for us. Let's see if it attracts people and keeps them close, so we can learn from them and they can tell us what they would like to see us doing differently.
And what you did there, and everybody, this is HOG. You're talking about HOG,
Yeah.
Harley Owners
Harley,
Group. A lot of people call it HOG.
Yep.
Okay. What's fascinating with HOG is it was a differentiator because, as you said, Ken, the CEO, all of the family from the Davidsons, they're riding out on their bikes. They're hanging out at the HOG events. Whereas, like you said, Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, do you see their presidents? Do you see their family? No, you don't see them. Now,
Sales
the
reps.
other thing that's brilliant about what you did with Harley Owners Group, you alluded to it, but it's ingenious, and that is Harley did not have to create a new place, like a new building for people to meet. No, it's at the dealership. Well, hold on, who's going to run it? Well, guess what? Fellow riders, fellow owners of the motorcycles, your customers and the dealer all chip in to run it. Why don't you share a little bit about that? Because it wasn't a big money pit for you guys.
It was actually a revenue generator, because riders, after you get a year membership in the club free if and when you buy a bike, but then after that it's like $35 a year, very, very affordable. So, and obviously there was clothing and accessories generated by that also created revenue. But to your point, because these were social clubs, they would plan activities, parties, dances, tremendous amount of local fundraising for muscular dystrophy, for breast cancer, or whatever the local group was plugged into. Very, very committed people. They did 90% of the administrative work. They would charge each other. Everybody's got to kick in money for the for the pizza and the chicken or whatever after. So they'd have these social meetings. They plan events all around riding. The officers of the club would get to wear patches on their vests, president, ride or road captain, secretary, things like. So this was a source of pride for a lot of people out there. And then we as we began doing larger gatherings, we'd do like regional rallies where 20, 30,000 people would show up, and then eventually 100,000 people would show up. You see, it's we're a family of very, very like-minded people, but we're all expressing our individuality. We've got our patches, we've got our clothing. Very, very cool thing to watch.
It's a brotherhood, it's a sisterhood, and it's a differentiator because no other brand had it. And here's what, this is where it's so brilliant. I have been a rider and I've been a member of HOG. If I want to be part of that experience, that community, I've got to ride a Harley. I don't want to leave that group of friends. If I'm less than thrilled with my current Harley model, I'm going to the dealership for the HOG meeting anyway. I'll look at another one and I'll buy one. It keeps people connected to the brand. And what you said earlier is, yes, the product's got to be great. It should be a very good product, of course. But the magnet that drew people together was human beings. And it started at the top. You and the leaders actually rode bikes. You lived your product. And that's another lesson in here. So many of us, think of the car dealer that sells Fords, and he or she drives a Maserati or a Lamborghini or a Porsche to work. And you're going, wait a minute, you're not living our brand. Well, the Harley leaders, the Harley dealers as well, they rode and believed in the brand.
I would tell you this because you just mentioned that, Barry, that when in the early 90s, there was a lot of benchmarking going on. I'm sure you remember the whole benchmarking
Yep.
movement where leaders of of companies would get together and share their problems, their issues, and how they're solving them. And I remember very, very clearly, like it was yesterday, sitting in a meeting room at Harley-Davidson with the absolute top leadership of a car company whose name I won't mention. And he was saying that what we envy is your ability to get this non-qualitative customer input by having discussions with and they're making suggestions on what they would like to see you do with product, not through surveys and forms, but they're actually telling you that, or scribbling something on doing their own drawings. And we struggle and we can't do that. And I just said, well, how much time do you guys spend in dealerships? and they said, well, we have our car program where we go in every 2 months and get a different car. I said, no, when are you just like going into dealerships and talking to not just the people that work there, but the people that are on the floor? What are they looking at? What would they like to see you as the leader of the business do? And they literally all stared at the table like, oh, we don't do that.
Right.
We get our information from our regional reps out there in the field, and they come and they report back, and they tell you what you want to hear.
That's right.
Right. And what doesn't create problems for them. And all this stuff gets missed. The voice of the customer, it isn't heard, and it's not even provoked. It's not even asked for.
That's
so you're missing
brilliant.
a huge opportunity.
We're going to come back after break, and I want to ask you about the value of the experience at the dealership and how that is a differentiator. So we'll be right back with Ken Schmidt on Difference Talks.
Difference Talks is a LaBeouf production. Our focus is differentiation, and we believe it's more important than ever to differentiate your brand and experience. Contact us at LaBeouf.com for a conversation. We'd love to connect with you.
All right, everybody, we are back with Ken Schmidt. Ken, I'm going to throw a curveball at you. Let's talk about human behavior. And you're telling me you can predict whether humans will find something interesting or repellent. So tell us what you're talking about here.
Sure. I love talking about human behavior. I stood in front of at Wall Street in one of our at Harley quarterly reviews of numbers. And a guy stood up and asked a question. He goes, when I'm talking to my clients, these are important conversations. Do you want to be promoted as a product story, or a great marketing story? And I said, well, actually, if I had my druthers, I'd love to hear you talk about it as a human behavior story. And everybody said, what? And I said, we've learned to tap into basic drivers of human behavior and leverage that to build this brand. This is kind of understanding humanity at its absolute simplest level. And well, tell us about that. And I said, well, here, easy one. I said, what do all human beings do to any source of delight in their lives? Anything that makes them feel good. And the answer is we return to it faithfully until it fails to delight us. What's that? That's what loyalty is. We're not loyal to the product. We're loyal to the people behind it. We're loyal to these feelings of delight. This pleased me. Well, it's going to keep pleasing me. And when it stops, I'll move to something else. So in other words, keep pleasing people. What is, and I tell us all, especially to people who have, or who go to trade shows or, work in retail environments. I'll say, what's the most magnetically attractive human trait in the dictionary sense? What's the most magnetically attractive force that pulls human beings forward? And they say, oh, like a smiling face. And I say, oh, don't you wish that was true, right? I mean, they used to smile at Sears, and what happened there? So the most magnetically attractive trait that humans can't resist is visible passion. When you're in the shared space of somebody who's clearly digging what they're doing at that moment, you lean toward that. That looks like I want to feel that way. I like that. We all like that versus the person who's standing with his hands in his pockets, or the clipboard guy at the trade show who might be staring down or looking bored or tired or disinterested or just has the fake smile on his face. Well, that's instantly repellent to our species. Well, this person is going to make me unhappy. This is going to be uncomfortable. Why would I'm not going to walk toward that person. Sale misses. Well, how is that difficult? It's not difficult at all. We judge other people in a hundredth of a second, whether we want to share space with them and have a conversation and hear what they have to say. Simple stuff. Here's another simple stuff. So what do people do when they're talking to customers, especially like a first time customer? What do businesses do with their websites or their social media? It's, well, we try to be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Fail. We don't want to be interesting. We win when we're interested, when we're the ones that are asking the questions about people's most important topic of conversation, which is themselves. When people are talking about themselves, you can't shut them up, which is awesome. Somebody's showing an active interest in me. I like the way that feels. I'm coming back for more. I'm going to keep talking to you as long as you're asking me questions about me. We'll eventually talk about the product and things if you want to, but right now, I'm feeling good because somebody's paying attention to me. Why don't we do that? Why don't more businesses do that? I don't, because they're too busy trying to sell stuff.
What's your message to businesses out there right now, whether they're selling trucks, whether they're a technology company, whatever? How can they learn from what you just shared with us?
It's vitally important to be known for who you are, not for what you do, because there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can make. There's nothing you could sell me. Nothing other than maybe a cure for, infectious diseases. Nothing you can sell me that I can't get from somebody else for less money. Period. And we all know that. That's why Amazon exists, because we believe everything is good, and no matter where it's coming from, we're going to be happy with what we get. To be competitive, you have to look at the world the way people do. And when people speak of a business, if you think of a business, a picture of a business forms in your mind, you will always use, if you're trying to describe that business, the pronoun they. Oh, I love them. They rock. They're cool. They suck. They stink. I would never do business with them. It could be a 100,000 employee conglomerate, a 2-person shop. Humans humanize everything. That's all we know how to do. So when we talk about a business, we don't talk about what they do. We talk about who they are. Right? They're awesome. They rock. They love them, hate them, don't know them, don't know what they do. And what that tells us is if we are known for what we do, we're going to be more competitive, because what people see when we think of a business is a mere reflection of the culture of that business. Oh, Harley, they're cool. They're so involved. They're so bang. That's the culture you're talking about.
Right.
And the culture is a reflection of the attitudes and the behavior of the people running the business.
Ken, whether we have that 2-person company or 30,000 person company, whether we sell it with a couple of our friends, or we have a distributor network, a broker network, a dealer network, share what the value, the power of the experience that the customer goes through, enjoys, endures, whatever it is, in the entire perspective of what you're talking about, the power of it, the importance of it.
What I love about the word experience is how it's become so corrupted and misused in the last 10 or 12 years. We have to give our customers, we have to provide a great customer experience. Oh man, that sounds really good, but does every employee at the business even know what that means, or what it looks like? It confuses people. And what I always instruct is all the customer experience is what a customer remembers, period. We give them, through our actions and the language that we use and the way we treat them, we give them something positive to remember, or we give them something negative to remember. But where most businesses live is that 80% of transactions in the middle, where I came in, I got what I paid for, and I left. I punched the button, the product showed up, the world kept turning. Thousands of these transactions a year for people that meant nothing. They don't remember it, therefore no experience. So if we can, in a dealership environment, in a retail environment, in a business environment, instead of being focused on selling people things. Just focus on a couple of simple things. What do I want these people coming in the door to remember about us and tell somebody else about, or come back for more of? What I always use the letters R and R. What do we want these people to remember and repeat? Remember and come back for more of, and remember and tell somebody else, because if they don't have a positive experience with us, so when they are talking about us, they're talking about how awesome we are, what a great business this is, how much they love spending time with us. If we're not doing that, we're going to be in that middle ground of we met their expectation and gave them what they paid for. Nobody returns for that.
You know, when I went shopping to buy a motorcycle about 10, 15 years ago, one of the executives at Harley said, "Hey, I'll hook you up with a dealer." And I said, "No, I want to go through the experience." And I did. And in a nutshell, I went to half a dozen dealers. 5 of the 6 would not allow me to sit on or ride a bike. They would not let me test one. Okay.
Yeah, crazy.
The one, and this speaks to your insight, the one dealer who said, "Hey, how you doing, man? What's going on?" and talked to me. And he loved Harley, and this guy was a rider, and he said, "You know, I'm not supposed to let you ride any of our new products. So you know what? You can ride my bike. Here's my bike. You can ride it around the dealership." Now, I never told him this. I said, "Great." I rode around the dealership, and I hit an oil spot on the back, at the back of the dealership, and dropped the bike. I picked it back up. There were no scratches. I
Thank
rode
God.
right around, and I thought, you know, I owe this guy a motorcycle. So I said, "Okay." I said, "I want to buy." That's what I remember, Ken, what you said. What I remember from the others was you can go buy a mug or a T-shirt in the gift shop. And
Yeah,
that's
the door's open.
why, right. That's why I bought. And that's the power of what we're talking about here. And you're right. It's what people remember and what they will repeat. And that's why I repeated that story to many people, and why I sent more business to that motorcycle salesperson.
What's interesting is when we began going through this process of repositioning the business, where it's going to be a lifestyle brand, a camaraderie brand, an individuality brand, a freedom brand. And notice I'm not talking about the word product there.
Mhm.
Dealers are very, very hesitant to even want to try to understand the thinking here. It's like, hey,
It's
we're
scary.
motorcycle people. This is what we know these things inside and out and backwards. I say, that's awesome. We're bankrupt. How's it working out for us? So we have to try something different here. And I say, you either make the effort or choose not to, and then live with the consequences. But what you're going to see is that the dealers who embrace this concept of these memorable experiences of making people feel like $1 million, they're going to start siphoning customers over from all the surrounding communities. And that's exactly what happens. So dealers got the message, oh, I need to be doing this. I need to do this too, or I'm going to lose customers. Bingo.
Hey,
Cause and
Ken,
effect.
this has been a memorable conversation. Any closing words and or suggestions on how people can reach out or learn more about you? Perhaps you do a little bit of a plug about your book.
Oh, sure. I've got a book out called Make Some Noise, The Unconventional Road to Dominance, that basically shows how to trip emotional triggers and plug into human behavior and leverage that for competitive advantage. You can find me at my website, kenspeaks.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, ask me questions there. Send me a message. There's no question anybody ever asked me that I don't answer. I love this stuff. Send me a picture of your bike. Happy to look at it. Whatever. I just love talking to people, love talking bikes, love talking business.
Ken, thank you so much. You know, today you've shared an amazing amount of passion. So again, you embodied what we're talking about. I'm leaning in as you're talking today on this about human behavior and about, the experience, something that is something they'll remember and something they'll repeat. And it could be negative or positive, and it's up to us to make that decision, like you said. And I really want to thank you for the passion you show and the belief in something that's very, very basic, but it's so important. And that's the human element in what
Amen,
we're
brother.
all doing in business.
the deeper we go into the digital realm, and it's happening and it's natural and it's got a lot of positives. The more humanity gets lost, and the more humanity gets lost, the more difficult it is for humans to connect in real, visceral, memorable, meaningful ways. So if we as business people do that for them, we're winning.
That's great. So with that, I thank everybody. Remember, leaders differentiate today. Ken definitely did that. Thank you, Ken Schmidt, for being our guest today on Difference Talks.
My honor, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Difference Talks. All of us at LeBov are proud to celebrate great people with inspiring messages. Difference Talks was created, produced, engineered, and performed by the LeBov team. Even the music is original. Contact us at lebov.com to learn how to differentiate your brand and give your team a sense of significance and meaning.